It's time for episode 83 of the Press Box podcast. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about a few different topics that are current in the sports world. We'll start with baseball, a little bit about the substance issue, MLB cracking down on foreign substances with pitchers, kind of how that's going to play out and kind of the reaction there. We'll talk a little bit about what that means for, baseball in a bigger picture, some hitters, pitchers, kind of how the game used to be, how it is going now, and how the analytics play into that, and it's kind of the bigger picture with a little bit about what's going on with baseball now. After that, we'll move on to a little bit of golf talk here ahead of the U.S. Open, and just a few other topics that come up in the sports world. So we'll look forward to that in just a second. But first, as always, follow us on Twitter at PressBoxPod, and then our YouTube channel that we've talked about before. Search PressBox Podcast on YouTube. Check us out there. Leave a comment. We like interacting with all our listeners there as well. So be on the lookout for that. And then finally, subscribe and rate on iTunes as well. If you listen to this podcast on iTunes, make sure you subscribe and get all the latest episodes, and go ahead and leave us a review while you're at it. Without further ado, it's episode 83 of the Press Box Podcast. Hope you enjoy it.
Okay, welcome back to the Press Box Podcast. I'm your co-host, Ralph Miranda. We're joined today by my other co-host, Joseph Miranda, and of course, our producer, Nathan Miranda. This is episode 83 of the Press Box Podcast. And today, similar to what we did a few weeks ago, or what Joseph and Nathan did, we're going to just talk about kind of a hodgepodge of items that's going on in the world of sports today. We feel like there are items that deserve some attention and deserve some discussion. So let's get into that right away. And, Nathan, do you have anything that you would like to throw out that maybe we could start our discussion on?
We'll start off by talking about the MLB cracking down on these banned substances on the baseballs that the pitchers are using, and kind of that pitcher for the Rays, Tyler Glasnow, his injury that he had a
partially torn ulnar radial ligament or something like that.
Partial tear in his UCL.
Yeah.
And he said he basically blamed it on this having to change his approach, to
right
what he uses on the baseball and how he grips the baseball. He says, quote, "I truly believe 100% that's why I got hurt," end quote. So
yeah, that's kind of an interesting topic going around today. I didn't pay much attention to it a couple weeks ago when Josh Donaldson made a comment about the Yankees pitcher Garrett Cole, saying that his spin rate of the ball, I guess, as it comes out of his hand, has been down without the substances that he uses. And of course, I didn't think much of that. And Garrett Cole in the interview didn't really want to address it. And I guess, Joseph, the thing that really confuses me about the whole issue is, we've watched baseball for years, and, take that Yankee pitcher back a few years ago. I forget his name off the top of my head. You probably remember his name. They caught him with pine tar on his hat, pine tar on his neck. And of course, they threw him out of the game or whatever. But my point is, if these substances have been banned all along, why all of a sudden has it become a big issue again?
Yeah, that was Michael Pineda.
Pineda, that's right.
Yeah. Question is, I don't know why baseball decided to has decided to recently crack down on them again. Because you're right, they've always been illegal, and throughout history, if it's obvious, they're gonna see it and eject it. Like Pineda had just pine tar on his neck, right? Like you don't.
He had it all over, yeah.
Yeah, nobody really does that. So if you see that, you're gonna do something. Now, every pitcher uses it, and they all hide it. So like some will go to their hat, some will put it on their belt, some will put it on their wrist, some will put it in their glove, some will put it wherever. This something they can go to and touch quick.
Right.
And then catchers will put it on their gear. They'll put it on their shin guard. They get a new ball from the umpire, they'll touch that, rub it up, throw it back to the pitcher.
Right,
so,
right.
So, and your comment about Josh Donaldson, like, if he was commenting on Garrett Cole.
Yes.
Well, I guarantee you his pitchers use it. So what is
Right.
right? So as far as the injury thing goes, what did you say, Nathan? He said he had no more.
He said, I got the article here.
He's had a partially torn ulnar collateral ligament.
Yeah, along with a flexor strain.
Right.
All right, and he says that he says, quote, "I'm choking the expletive out of my pitches," end quote. And now that he stopped using it, he changed his grip. Apparently, he says, quote, "I just threw 80 something innings, and you, MLB, just told me I can't use anything. I have to change everything. I truly believe 100% that's why I got hurt. I'm frustrated. MLB doesn't understand. You can't just tell us to use nothing. It's crazy," end quote.
Well, I guess he's probably talking about like some kind of curveball or slider. Choking just means you got to hold it deep in your hand and grip it tighter so you have a better grip.
Okay.
As opposed to just, I guess, the sticky stuff helping grip it better just naturally. But
so he's having to, I see, because he can't grip it as well.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's a good point.
That can make sense then possibly straining your arm then.
Sure.
I don't know, but
Sure.
yeah, I guess elbows. But again, he's like probably the only guy that actually like, we can't use stuff anymore. I guess I won't use stuff. Like they're all still using it.
Right.
They got to hide it, or you know what I mean? Like be prepared to hide it better. I don't know, but nobody's gonna stop. Man, I guess he stopped. I don't know. It's true. Yeah, nobody stopped.
Yeah, so you're saying he's basically why did he just stop? Then everyone hears this. Everyone knows that it's illegal. It's always been illegal. He should just found another way to use it or whatever.
Right, and like I said, most guys are good at it. So,
yeah. And
then the umpire is just going to come out before every game and like pat down a pitcher. Like either the other team can complain, and they're not going to do it because their guy's doing it.
Right.
Unless it's totally obvious, like you have pine tar on your neck or you've got it like dripping from your glove or something. It's really hard to find it.
Yeah, I'm not sure why. Like you said, if it's always been illegal and guys have always used it, like everyone, like he basically just said that it's crazy that they can't. Like he's basically implying that everybody used it. So and he was never caught like with it on his neck. This guy. So why did he feel like all of a sudden he needed to stop? You know what I mean? Like that's what's strange.
I don't know.
Like I know the MLB came out and said you can't use it anymore, but he's always known he can't use it. So if he had been using it, why did he all of a sudden stop?
I don't know. My bigger question is why would he even come out and admit it? You know, I mean, like for example, you know, we've known for years that these guys are using it. You know, now why all of a sudden is it such a big deal? And then he even says in that same interview that he was at a players rep meeting, and I think there were 30 some players reps there, and none of the hitters were opposed to pitchers using it. In other words, the hitters said they even welcome that they're using it because they get better control with their pitches, as opposed to a pitch that maybe gets away from them and hits them or whatever. So I don't understand why all of a sudden, one, it's become such a big topic of discussion, and two, why Major League Baseball needs to feel like they have to make some kind of statement about
and three, why Tyler Glasnow decided he's going to quit cold turkey now.
Right, exactly.
Which just says what he did. He used the sunscreen rosin mix, and he says he says I guess he had 11 strikeouts, but he woke up sore. He said I felt completely different.
Right.
Yeah, sunscreen rosin is popular because it's hard to see. You just put sunscreen on and then you pat it with rosin.
Right, that's a good point. The rosin's on the mound, right? I mean, it's available.
That's true. So you're allowed to use that.
It's right there on the mound, the bag. Yeah.
So then you put sunscreen on your arms or whatever. You pat the rosin on your arm.
Bunch of like on your forearm above your glove, and you just kind of touch it like this, the rosin, and
Makes sticky substance.
Yeah. That's a good question. I haven't followed it up to this point, but I mean, I haven't followed the most recent stuff before this injury, but yeah, the MLB. I don't know. Did something lead to this? Did another guy get caught with it on his neck recently? Is that what?
No.
Their way of like putting out a statement that's like we're in control of the cheating or something. I don't know. I mean,
but how did cheating become a talking point again? Though is my point.
That's what I'm saying. I think it was the start of this Garrett Cole thing, where that's the first I heard of it, where Josh Donaldson came out and made a big stink about it, and. You know, of course, Garrett Cole's one of the top pitchers in the American League. So they thought, well,
we got to say something.
You're going to make a big deal out of it, you know. And I don't know. I mean, I really don't know why all of a sudden this is. I don't hear any other hitters saying anything about it. You know what I mean? And that's the thing that is also so confusing is that the hitters know the pitchers use it, and you don't hear hitters coming out every other month when they're in a slump saying, oh, because like Joseph said, they know their guys are using it. Okay. So it's just something you live with and deal with. And now all of a sudden, Major League Baseball, and I think part of it too is, let's face it, pitchers have become more dominant all of a sudden, right? We talked about this with Steve Dunn. We talked about it with Joseph last time. 6-7 no-hitters already this year. Well, we thought maybe you could attribute that to the fact that hitters are trying to hit the ball out of the park. But remember what Steve Dunn told us. He thought it was because the pitchers are better. So maybe Major League Baseball feels like, hey, we want more offense. We want to get rid of all these no-hitters. So by cracking down on this, they make the pitchers less effective.
Yeah.
But to Joseph's point, if you're going to crack down on it, unless you go out there and check the pitcher before every inning, it's still going to happen. Like, how can you really crack down on it?
You can't. You really can't, but anyway, let's.
Well, I was going to say this deal with spin rate. What exactly is spin rate?
Just the rate at which your ball spins somehow. I don't know.
If you're throwing a curve or a slider, there's spin to it, right?
So the higher spin rate means it's a more effective pitch.
It's whatever.
Well, think about it this way. Like in golf, for example, when you hit a wedge shot, the harder you can come down on the wedge shot, and the more solid contact you make, the more spin is on the golf ball, therefore causing it to land and spin back to the pin. If you don't swing hard enough, you're not going to get any spin. So it's the same with a pitcher. If he's got that really good grip with that baseball on his fingertips, and he can throw it hard, he can create more spin on his curveballs or his slider. And if Joseph said, if he's choking down on the baseball, means it's farther back in his hand, he's not going to be able to get as much spin because he can't generate enough velocity and movement on the ball. So I think that's the concept behind it.
Okay.
Would you agree with that, Joseph?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we could talk probably forever on that, and I'm sure we could bring it back into what I'm about to bring up, but let's move over. We talked about this once before. Pitchers today, they pull them out of the game at 95, 96 pitches. Very seldom do you see a pitcher throw over 100 pitches unless he's throwing a no-hitter or whatever. You got guys coming out in even starters that are pitching a pretty good game will come out in the sixth inning. And I sent you guys both something that I read, which I thought was really fascinating. I lived in this era. You guys didn't, but it said on June 14th of 1974, which was 47 years ago, Nolan Ryan threw an unbelievable 235 pitches while striking out 19 batters, including Cecil Cooper 6 consecutive times, and issuing 10 walks in 13 innings in the Angels' 15-inning 4-3 victory over Boston and Anaheim. Not to be outdone, Luis Tiant, who was the Red Sox pitcher, pitched all 14 in the third innings, throwing 163 pitches, and he suffered the complete game loss. Now, I think that's just fascinating because these guys probably came out 5 days later and made their next start, or actually 4 days later, because back then you didn't have a 4 or 5 pitcher rotation. And Nolan Ryan, obviously, he's in the Hall of Fame. Luis Tiant, probably not, but he was a great pitcher. So, it's just amazing today how much pitching has changed.
Yeah, and also you talked about starters coming out that are well in the fifth or sixth. It's a whole analytic thing, like, oh, can't this guy face the lineup the third time? Like, they're on to him now. Like, it could not be a pitch count thing. It could just be like their strategy or whatever, which obviously didn't exist back then. Which
right.
Is, I don't know. I think it's kind of ridiculous too. But yeah. I wonder what made them pull Ryan after the 13th. Like, why didn't you just go 15 at that
point? Yeah, that's a really good question. He pitched 13 innings. Maybe it was the 10 walks. I don't know. He gave up 10 walks.
Maybe like 7 of those came in the last inning, and they're like, oh.
I just think it's. That doesn't that just boggle your mind? If you told a pitching coach today in Major League Baseball, who probably doesn't even know this, that Nolan Ryan threw 235 pitches. Today, that's almost 3 full games, right?
Yeah.
if you told a hit pitching coach he did that, and then he didn't take like a year off after that, which they'd probably advise, they'd have a heart attack probably.
And I'm sure he came out and didn't miss his next start. And you remember when Nolan Ryan went on to be the president of the Rangers back about, I don't know, I want to say roughly 20 years ago or so. He's tried to institute that same philosophy. He said that his pitchers were going to get tougher. They were going to throw longer into the game. They were going to throw more pitches. And I think it worked for a while. And then, of course, he left and they went right back to the way they used to be. But
yeah, do you think that's Joseph? Do you think that's do you think that's been a positive change in baseball? This whole thing about like bringing in different pitchers, so guys aren't facing the same guy multiple times, or do you think it's not necessarily helping?
I think it. I don't know. If you don't have like a dominant starter out there like Scherzer or like a top line starter, I think it probably is good to get a fresh arm in there, and like if you get some matchup like lefty on lefty and stuff like that, it's probably beneficial to you. And I'm sure the little analytics tell you that it is. But also, I just think that if pitcher's throwing well that night or he's on, then you should just leave him in there. Like, I think it's case by case basis. Like if your starters, if it's the fifth inning and he's giving up 3 runs and it's kind of just average, okay, put somebody else in. But if he's throwing well, there's no reason to take him out just because you're supposed to. You know what I mean? So
yeah, and don't you think too that I think the current philosophy in Major League Baseball has lent itself to all these pitcher injuries, arm injuries, because maybe this isn't spoken outright, but I think it's subliminally spoken, is that, hey, just go out there and throw as hard as you can for 6 innings, and then we'll bring in another guy. Okay. Well, that doesn't force the pitcher to use strategy, right? In other words, to say, okay, I'm going to throw this set of pitches to these guys the first time. The next time I'm going to have to change it up a little bit. I'm going to have to change speeds, change location. And now they're just going to go out there and throw as hard as you can for 6 innings, and we'll put somebody else in there. And I think they're overthrowing a lot of times. And I mean, I think that lends itself to the problem we've got today.
yeah, could be. I don't know. I don't know exactly what their thought process is. I do think they still use strategy, but yeah, I don't know.
That is interesting because I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah,
Because they maybe if they know they're only going to face a guy once or a handful of times, they feel like they don't have to. But Joseph said they still use strategy, right? They don't just throw. Joseph, you think they still prepare like, okay, I'm going to see these hitters multiple times. You're going to have to approach them different ways each time. They still think of it that way.
Well, I guess so. But I think about, we've all watched the movie For Love of the Game, a great movie, right? And Billy Chapel's throwing a perfect game. So obviously they're not taking him out. But late in the game, his arm was hurting. But he said, hey, think, Billy, don't just throw. And I think that's what pitching is all about, isn't it? I mean, when you start facing these guys the second time through, or even the third time through, you can't just throw. You got to think, okay? In other words, how did I get him out last time? What is he looking for? Now I know to Joseph's point, is a very good point. Strategy says, hey, if I can bring a fresh arm in there, but I think these pitchers don't develop enough because you want a guy out there like Greg Maddux. The guy pitched a lot of complete games. Because he was a master at what he did, and he never threw really that hard. It was all location. So, I don't know. I just think.
Who's to say they aren't thinking like that? Just because they're not throwing as many pitches doesn't exactly have to correlate to the fact that, they're not really thinking and they're just throwing.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess so.
Maybe they have the exact same approach and they're still thinking the same way. It's just that they're taking out quicker.
It could be. Yeah.
And Josh, to your point, do you? I know you said you think it should be more of a case by case type of basis, right? Like if your guy's on one night, you leave him in or whatever, not just strictly by the number of analytics. Do you think that? I assume that's kind of how teams did. Like if a guy was on, they're not going to put in a left-hander just because the left-hander guy's at the plate. Or do you think teams do a lot of times go strictly by the analytics, not so much of what they're seeing?
I think a lot of teams go by the analytics.
Really?
Yeah, like that. They're not going to bring in a left-hander like in the second inning or something. But when it's time to close to take the starter out, or he's throwing 7 or so, then they're more likely to do that. Yeah.
Even if he's hot, if he's on.
Yeah, depending on who it is. They may
Right.
not do, Garrett Cole, but your average starter.
Well, you could argue that going by the analytics might have cost the Tampa Bay Rays a World Series last year. I mean, in game 6, I think it was it game 6 or game 7? I don't remember exactly. Game 6, yeah. Blake Snell was pitching. He was pitching great. All right. Yeah. They pulled him out because he had reached such and such pitches, and they ended up losing the game, and the Dodgers won the World Series. I mean, even he was flabbergasted by it. You know, so I think sometimes you get paralyzed by those analytics. They should have left him in there.
Well, take somebody out for pitch count in the World Series is the most ridiculous thing ever because he's about to have a whole offseason.
Right.
I can see if it's the first game of the year or something, maybe.
But my point is that's where the analytics become suffocating. Is if you keep going by them, you tend to not step back and say, okay, let me think this thing through based on the situation.
And have analytics have going strictly by the numbers or the introduction of analytics in any sport, has it ever proved to be better than the old way? I don't think it has. I mean, I can't think of an example of when. I mean, it seems like even in football, when coaches go more, when they take chances on going for fourth downs or they go more with their gut on situations, it seems to work out more often than not than opposed to what the analytics do. This situation, it seems like the analytics maybe work from time to time, but on the whole, it seems like teams are winning World Series, not on the analytics, but on something else.
Yeah.
And I know the A's had that whole analytics Moneyball thing, right?
Right.
But that was more about how you're going to build your team, not how you're going to manage in the game, right? That was more about how they're building their team. Right?
Probably. Yeah.
But my point is, has it ever proven that the analytics is the way to go in any sport? I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, this also adds a lot of credence to what Joseph was. Remember when we had our podcast episode on Hall of Fame, who's in, who's out, right? And I used to laugh at Joseph when he used to say these guys from the 40s and that they don't deserve. But you know something? He might be onto something here. And why is it Major League? Why do we not hear all these sports pundits talk about that? My point being, if today you've got all these pitchers, you've got guys that start, you got middle relievers, you got guys that come in to set up, you got guys that close. It's harder on a hitter today because they're always facing a good pitcher. Whereas back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, these guys through 14, 15 innings, if you're a hitter, I'm sure that pitch number 198 by Nolan Ryan probably wasn't as great as pitch number 67. Okay. So my point is maybe some of those statistics were inflated back in those days from a hitter standpoint. I don't hear anybody talking about that. So, this brings up a lot of different questions.
And I feel like, and there's probably some worth to this, but I feel like a lot of times when people go back to look at past Hall of Famers in any sport, I think a lot of times, especially like the professional type people on TV and stuff, they feel like it comes off as disrespectful to try to present reasons why a guy maybe is not a Hall of Famer. I mean, so they're not going to do that. And I guess I can understand that, especially if someone has recently passed away, of course, or anything like that. I just feel like they think it's disrespectful or they see it as attacking a guy. But I can understand that, but I don't think it's not coming from a place of disrespect or trying to attack a guy's career. It's just talking stats and stuff. Right. Do you think he's a Hall of Famer? In other words, I don't know if people are willing to bring that up on like ESPN.
Right.
I don't think they'd be willing to do that. Yeah. They're willing to talk about a guy who's not in the Hall of Fame and say he should be because that's a positive thing.
Right.
But I don't think they're willing to look back and go like, Carl Banks or not. What's his name? Yeah, I don't know. What's that guy for the Cubs? Carl something or
Ernie Banks?
Ernie Banks.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to be like Ernie Banks. Come on, should he be in? They're more likely to say like that Cowboys receiver that didn't get in all these years. Like he should.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know what I mean? Do you
agree? Carl Banks played linebacker with the Giants. Right?
Yeah,
I know. He should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard now than it ever has been in baseball, for a lot of reasons. But yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, that's why I think they don't do it. And like I said, just for anyone who's listened to our past Hall of Fame episodes, we're not trying to be disrespectful when we talk about that type of stuff.
No, we're not.
Guy.
I think all those guys, me, I'm a big proponent of that. All the guys from the 40s, 50s, 60s should be in the Hall of Fame. I'm just saying, if you're going to start talking about all these substances and stuff today, why are we not talking about why it's making it tougher on the hitters today as opposed to as it did back then. You see what I mean? That's all I'm trying
I
to
wonder
say.
if guys use stuff like in the 50s and 60s pitchers.
Oh, sure they did. Yeah,
they probably used even like
they used to throw
stuff.
spitballs back then.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But see, here's the difference. I think today the substances are allowing the pitchers to get better grips on the baseball and create more spin. Okay, whereas and obviously that spin, I guess, leads to movement of the baseball. But back in those days, it was more just if you could load the baseball with some kind of substance, it allowed it to drop more, it sunk more. Okay. I don't think guys back then were so adept at throwing these hard sliders and cutters that they throw today.
Also, back to your point, some people, they're just Hall of Famers in any area you look at. Like if I'm managing a baseball game and it's like it's late in the game in a crucial situation, and before we take the field for the inning, they say we can put Nolan Ryan on the mound for you. He's already thrown 200 pitches though, but he can face the heart of the lineup. Or we could put in a fresh Tyler Glasnow or something. I was like, give me Nolan Ryan. I don't care how many pitches he's thrown.
Also, I was going to say, notice too now, like they obviously when the ball's out of play, foul ball, home run, whenever you get a new ball, but they get new balls constantly. Like one in the dirt, the catcher will like pick it on his thing, pause it, and get a new one from the umpire, right? I guarantee you, like in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, they used the same ball like as long as they could. Went out of play, right? So by the third inning, or if nobody's hit a foul ball or home run, the ball is probably just like filthy and like heavy and dirty and
that's a good point too.
What happens? That's a good point. What happens to all these balls, Joseph? What do they do with that? Like they go through balls like every pitch. What happens?
Well, like the catcher will just like throw in the dugout, the ball boy, and he'll either like just toss in the stands, or they'll put in like a bag and they'll reuse them for like BP the next day or something.
So they become BP balls.
Well, I've also noticed. Have you ever noticed where like sometimes the umpire will call the ball boy out to bring him more balls for his, and I noticed sometimes the umpire will look at it. So I don't know if he's like, if those might have been a ball that had come from earlier in the game, and he's trying to see if it still could be used. Maybe,
but there's also all these balls are rubbed down with this substance. Like if you open a baseball out of a package, it's so shiny and slick, you can't use it in a game. Like it's so like the ball boy or however many balls are required for a game, it's like over 100. They all got to be rubbed down with this like clay stuff. So the balls have a little bit like with darker tint to them. So it's just so it's like almost like a matte finish as opposed to like slick.
Right.
So what's the umpires making sure that's been done, or what?
Probably that, or like I said, it could be just inspecting to make sure it's a new ball,
or that there's no substance on it. I guess
could be.
So, but no pitchers would want to use a ball that hasn't been rubbed down with that stuff, though, right? They don't. Yeah, they want it rubbed down. I sent you all a picture. I just thought I'd talk about this briefly. Did you see, speaking of pitchers, did you see CC Sabathia has got into shape now?
Yeah. Why didn't he do it 25 years ago?
Well, probably because was he the one who tried to lose some weight one time and like he was pitching worse and then he just gained it back? Was that
he did. Yeah.
That's probably why he didn't do it. I don't blame him. But now it looks like he's got kind of ripped. Yeah.
It looks cut now.
It looks weird though.
Here's another topic I want to bring up, Joseph, and Nathan and I were talking a little bit about this a couple of days ago. Is we were watching a clip of the one of these college baseball playoffs, and of course they still use aluminum bats in college baseball. And I was watching one of the Tennessee hitters Sunday hit a ball off. Didn't even look like he caught it very well. It seemed to launch pretty high, but not very powerfully, and that ball just sailed out of the ballpark in right field. Okay, well, obviously the aluminum bats. So I guess my question is, Nathan's question was, why don't they use wooden bats in college? Well, I think part of the reason is cost, maybe, but because you're going to break a lot of wooden bats. Okay, but here's my question: do you think that if they forced college baseball to use wooden bats, would hitters coming into the minor leagues be that much farther ahead in their progression or performance?
Maybe. Yeah, I don't. That's worth. I think that a lot of players hit with wooden bats anyway in BP and stuff in college, like especially ones that have a feeling they're going to get drafted to play pro baseball. But Yeah, and obviously they don't win games. Obviously, it's just a difference. But I would, regardless of that, I would like to see them use wooden bats in college. I think you should use wooden bats everywhere. Like
I agree. Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
you can you can make youth wooden bats, and little league pitchers are not so. You're not going to be like sawing guys off at the handle in little league. Like, it's going to be okay. I think like they'll be able to hit the ball and stuff, and like in high school and college, like I think that you should all use wooden bats. That's how baseball's supposed to be played.
Yeah, we did it when I was in little league. We used wooden bats. We used wooden bats in high school, and I was a very adept switch hitter.
I like that. I like that using wooden bats all around. I mean, I think if you're going to use metal bats at some point, I think little league's fine, and I think anything up to high school is probably fine. But I like the idea of using wooden bats everywhere.
I agree.
But college, I mean, if I was somebody who had a lot of like pool in the public society, and I wanted like a cause I was going to start promoting on Twitter, my cause would be get wooden bats in college baseball. I'd be going on TV. I'd be starting campaigns. I'd be starting nonprofit organizations. They need to get that. They need to make that happen.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm okay if you want to go up until high school, you can use metal. That's fine. But yeah, high school and college. If you can go straight from your current level to Major League Baseball,
Right.
You should go.
Yeah, little league. That's cool though. I like that. You're right. They're not going to be breaking bats in little league.
Yeah.
But another thing that I talked about, if you're a guy in high school, all right, what am I trying to say? If you're a high school baseball player, you're gonna go to college to play baseball. Like you're not gonna get drafted and go to professional right away. Do you think? But you. This is a weird. I don't know how to ask it really. But you feel like you have maybe have the ability to someday play professionally. Like you plan to try to play after college. Is my point, right? Do you think it'd be a smart move, or do you think it'd prepare you for the minor leagues any better if you're the high school senior to instead of going to play in college to go and try to play like in an independent league or like I don't even know if you can do that, but try to find a league that's not college that uses wooden bats. Do you think that prepare you any better for the minor leagues than going to college?
No, not really. You might as well go to college, I think.
Do you think the talent level you'd face would be better than you'd face in college? Like the pitching and stuff?
Yeah, probably. Maybe. It depends. I don't know as much about like independent leagues, but probably.
So, but you don't think of that? You think it's kind of a wash, like do whatever?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, interesting. Yeah, I didn't know those guys. I didn't know you guys use wooden bats and BP and stuff a lot. Like, is that would that not be weird then when you go to the game? Does it feel any different? Like, does it mess you up in the game?
It's not that hard to switch over. I mean, it's like you take 4 rounds. Okay, you might take metal, then wood, and then finish with metal or something like that. You know what I mean? I don't know. You can switch it up.
I bet it's funny too, and like all of a sudden, like I bet guys think it's funny. Like halfway through the season, say some guy gets hot, he's on, he's hitting a bunch of home runs. All of a sudden, he breaks out the wooden bat and BP. It's like, oh, he thinks he's getting drafted now. Use the wooden bat.
Yeah.
Let's touch real quickly on. We don't have to get into deep discussion about the NBA and the NHL playoffs. I just want to get some quick ideas about that. I think I read where the NBA playoffs right now are still in the conference semifinals, with the exception of Phoenix, who's moved on to the conference finals. But you've got the Clippers and the Jazz playing to get to meet Phoenix. You've got the 76ers and the Hawks in one semifinal in that conference, and I guess the Bucks and the Nets in the other one. I saw an interesting stat that said that of those 8 teams that are left, I think 5 of them have never won an NBA championship, which really is pretty amazing. I mean, it's more than likely you're going to have a team win it this year that's never won it before. So I just kind of want to get your thoughts about that. I mean, do you think that's partly the change in the schedule, this play-in tournament? I mean, it's just interesting how the landscape has maybe changed a little bit.
Yeah, I think that probably has something to do with it. The schedule and the playing tournament, which is kind of weird. I don't really like that, but I don't know what to attribute that to. Really, I guess it's I don't really know.
I've been keeping up with the NBA like the last 5 years or more. But are guys like, is that whole thing where, all these superstars used to team up and dominate, is that like starting to kind of disperse more? Are good players kind of more, or is there more disparity in the league now? Are good players kind of on different teams now more than they used to be? Maybe is that why or no?
Really, I mean, the Nets are still one of those teams. They've got Durant, Harden, and Irving, and all those guys.
Yeah.
The Lakers are still. Obviously.
Yeah, Lakers are. I mean, I just think it's refreshing to see.
Yeah.
Well, Phoenix, for example. I mean, Phoenix was the doormat of the league not that long ago, and now they seem to be rolling through the playoffs.
Yeah,
I mean, you got the Clippers, which everybody thought they should be good when they got Kawhi Leonard, and then they choked last year or 2 years ago. So now you've got them in it against the Jazz. The Jazz have never really won anything.
What's this, 98?
Yeah. Well, they didn't win it. They were there, but they didn't win it. The Hawks, they haven't won anything since they were probably in St. Louis back in the 50s. And you got the 76ers, who everybody thought they were going to eventually do something, and now they are.
That's that whole trust the process team. Do they still have the same guys they had during that whole phase?
Yeah, they do. Joel Embiid, and they still have Simmons, or did he leave?
No, they have Simmons.
Yeah, so they still got a pretty good team. And then you got the Bucks and the Nets. The Bucks have been good for the last 2 or 3 years, but now there's starting to be questions whether Giannis is really what everybody thought he was going to be.
Oh, really?
Well, because they can't win. They can't get over the hump.
I was going to ask you, think that Giannis guy is eventually going to team up with some of the superstars? He's like the only guy in the Bucks, right?
Yeah, he's the only guy. I don't know. I think it's definitely possible. Yeah. I just think it's kind of just luck of the draw, and like you said, it is refreshing that you went through those years of like 4 in a row Cavs Warriors matchups. And
yeah, exactly. I mean, this year,
what happened to the Warriors? Are they still good?
No, they lost out in the play-in game, I think, in the tournament. In the play-in tournament, I think they lost out.
It sounds to me like it's just like a freak thing.
Well, yeah, I mean,
like usually LeBron's in it right now, and he'll usually win probably. So that just happened this year. That didn't happen somehow. So.
And just to give fairness to all our hockey fans out there, we don't have to talk about this much, but the conference finals have started. You have the Montreal Canadiens against the Vegas Golden Knights. The Knights are up 1-0 in that series. The New York Islanders are playing the Tampa Bay Lightning, who are the defending Stanley Cup champions. The Islanders took game 1. The Lightning won game 2 last night. That series goes back to Long Island tomorrow night for game 3. So, you do have a defending champ in that one, but the Canadiens haven't been much lately. The Vegas Knights got to the Stanley Cup finals a few years ago as an expansion team. So not a whole lot of difference in hockey, but the Islanders are kind of a new team. The Canadiens haven't been there in a while. And it's interesting because the Canadiens had to come this year. They realigned hockey because of the COVID thing, where all the Canadian teams were in the same division, and the playoffs actually, up until this point now in the playoffs, it was all divisional playoffs. So this is the first time the Canadians have played anybody outside of the Canadian teams. So it's a little interesting there to see how that.
They're going to continue this, or just
no? I think this was a temporary.
So they had like a Canadian playoff section,
Canadian division,
right? But in the playoffs they didn't pair a Canadian team with another team.
No, not until now. Not until they got to the conference finals.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I think. When's the last time an expansion team in any league has been as good as the Vegas Knights have been since they've started? They got to the Stanley Cup Finals.
They got to the Stanley Cup Finals in their first year, which is really now that the Islanders were an expansion team in 1975. They won the Stanley Cup, the first cup in 1980. So they were
that's 5 years.
Yeah, pretty quick progression there. So yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting to see how that's playing out over on the hockey side. And then we got golf going on right now. I mean, we got the U.S. Open starting here tomorrow. Everybody's talking about Phil Mickelson. He's all over the TV and, all the interviews because he won the PGA. But I got news for you. Phil Mickelson will probably miss the cut at the U.S. Open. I mean, that's my prediction.
He's still a 50-year-old golfer.
51 as of today.
I mean, he's Phil Mickelson, so he's better than half the guys out there. But I'm saying he's still 51 years old. So, I mean, he did win last time, but remember that,
Right.
I don't know.
No, I just think that's funny. And, you brought up, you sent us one of the topics, 6 near misses that Phil had at the U.S. Open. Of course, everybody wants to talk about the U.S. Open because it's the only major Mickelson has not won.
Why do you think he's going to miss the cut? Just because
I just think he is. I just think he is. I mean, I don't know why. I just had the feeling that. And I'm sorry. I mean, if our fans who love Phil Mickelson are opposed to this, but the PGA, Phil played great. Don't get me wrong. He changed his whole philosophy. He didn't try stupid shots. But if Brooks Koepka would not have folded in the final round, he would have won the PGA. I mean, he basically gave it away, and I just think that he gave Mickelson a chance to just play conservative. So we'll see. I mean, the U.S. Open's Torrey Pines, the rough is exceptionally rough to say it that way. So I think it'll be interesting to see.
Maybe Phil needs to use a sunscreen rosin mix to grip his gloves.
That's not such a bad idea for him. So.
No, we saw his chiropractor before this tournament, so he could let it rip on the tee box.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. He saw his chiropractor. That's right. So a lot of things going on in the world of sports right now. I mean, especially baseball, which seems to be, here in another probably 2 or 3 weeks, it'll be the only major sport that's going on. So it'll become even more of a popular topic. And of course, you got the Yankees out there still fledgling. And I noticed that Cashman came out and made a statement that, of course, he's been pressed about the Aaron Boone and whether they were going to keep him as manager. And his quote was, quote, "We're in this together. We made our bed. We have to sleep in it."
Sometimes you're saying like the guy's crap, but we're gonna keep him.
Yeah, I don't know what they're trying to do over there, but
well, I mean, did they think that hiring Aaron Boone was gonna be like a great move?
Well, that goes back to our strategy, and we talked about this before. Is that Aaron Boone doesn't make any decisions? He's basically just out there to steer the ship.
I would hire Derek Jeter before I hired Aaron Boone.
Yeah.
And if I was Jeter, I wouldn't have wanted to do that.
No.
I don't think
I think they need to hire Girardi back. I mean, they need somebody that tough.
Girardi would have been
tough.
Well, why'd they get rid of him?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I
think they just kept him to the one.
Well, I think that Girardi was the kind of guy that bucked a lot of what the decisions were. He wanted his own philosophy, and they want to make decisions for their managers now.
What's Joe Torre doing? Oh, he's like has a position with MLB, doesn't he?
Yeah. He's like probably behind all this pitch substance stuff. He's like vice president in charge of something,
Vice president in charge of something. That's what his business card says. Joe Torre, vice president in charge of something.
Boy, that's funny. Well, it'll be it'll be an interesting summer nonetheless, but pretty soon we'll have the NFL starting up again, and
all will be right.
All will be right in the world. That's right.
I'm interested to talk about the MLB All-Star festivities when that comes around, though, because I don't know, it's just always fun to watch that.
Yeah, we'll see. So, good bunch of topics there. I think we've covered them all, and hopefully we will get into more of this in future episodes. I hope you've enjoyed the fact that we've had a couple guests on recently, Steve Dunn and Tony Aruli, and we're going to look to do more of that. Remember our Twitter account at PressBoxPod. Check it out. Hit us up on Twitter. Nathan, our producer, has created a YouTube channel, the PressBox Podcast channel. I think he's gone through all the episodes now and has put up various clips from those episodes based on certain discussions we might have had. He's done a lot of promotion of that on not only on YouTube, but on Facebook and on LinkedIn. So we're trying to get our presence out there. You've got lots of ways that you can connect with the PressBox Podcast, lots of ways that you can assimilate information, whether it be YouTube, whether it be Twitter, whether it be listening to our podcast, which obviously we want you to continue to do. So lots of ways for you to get involved. We'd love to hear from you. You can also listen to the podcast on my blog, theoldlinebacker.com. So we look forward to that. Joseph, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Nathan, our producer, thank you for all that you do to keep us going. And that's it for the PressBox Podcast, episode 83, and we'll see you next time.